Hey guys, what's going on? This is Andrew here today, and we're going to be looking at the Dell Optiplex once again, but this time we're actually going to be finally upgrading the thing. So I've been keeping this thing at its original spec for all the other videos, but this time we're going to be adding in something new, and this time we are simply just adding in a graphics card. So I decided not to add any RAM in this video, but if I feel like that we need to add some to make it perform even more, I will get another set and see if it improves the performance that much. So the card that I opted with, which I mentioned a few times, happens to be the GTX 750 Ti, and my friend was actually nice enough to give me his old card. Well, actually, I bought it from him. I bought it from him for $75. You can find this card nowadays for around like 100, but once the crazy Bitcoin mining craze quiets down, you'll probably be able to find this one for around the same price that I got it for. So I want to say thank you to him. If he gives me something to shout out, that will be in the description, but for now I just want to say thank you to Noah. So we will be using this card in my PC, and considering that it doesn't need any external power from like the power supply, we can just plug this directly into the motherboard and it'll work straight out of the box. So I'm very excited to get everything up and running, and like I said, if I feel like we need more improvements, I will end up adding more RAM into this thing. Alright guys, if you didn't see the last few videos, this is the PC we have here. It's got an i5-3470 in there running at 3.2 gigahertz and 6 gigs of RAM. As of this video, we have the GTX 750 Ti in there, so that is great news. And considering we have HDMI output now, we are now outputting this to my 32-inch Samsung TV instead of the monitor that I used for VGA before. So the resolution that we are running at is 1366 by 768 rather than doing 1920 by 1080, because 1920 by 1080 doesn't scale too well on this TV. Considering the 750 Ti in most modern games doesn't run too well at 1920 by 1080, a majority of the games tested in this video are going to be in 1366 by 768, and anything that needs to be run lower will be run lower. So without further ado guys, let's start getting into some games. The first two games that we're going to be looking at are GTA 5 and Rainbow Six Siege, since in the last video where we looked at the games running integrated graphics, that's where the games ran the worst. So let's get into it. Alright guys, we're going to start off looking at GTA 5, and we are running this at basically everything on the normal settings, 1366 by 768, and it looks like we're actually getting a 60 FPS average while we are driving at this fast speed, which is a huge improvement over what we were getting before with just the integrated graphics. Obviously, that's something to be expected when going from integrated graphics to an actual graphics card, but I didn't expect us to get a 60 FPS average. Obviously, you're going to see stutter a little bit considering that we are only running on 6 gigs of RAM, but the fact that this is running as well as it is completely shocking, and it just goes to show that at this low of a price point, you can run GTA 5 at basically perfect performance. Alright guys, so the next game that we're going to be looking at is Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, as I mentioned earlier before, and we are playing at the construction site with everything at medium settings, 1366 by 768, and we are getting pretty much an average of about 125 FPS, I would say, probably 125 based on the numbers that we're looking at, which is an awesome average when considering that, you know, when you're playing a game like this, you want to get the highest FPS possible, especially if you have something like a 144 hertz monitor, because then you can have a competitive advantage against other people. This is a major improvement over what we had before, because in the last video, we were only running this game at 19. So with the addition of the graphics card, we were able to boost this performance so much higher, and there are times where this game jumps into the 150, almost 160 range. I think that is an awesome win. 125 FPS average is such an awesome result. Alright guys, so I thought it would be cool to take another look at Clone Hero once again, and I am absolutely shocked, like completely shocked. This is exactly the performance that you would want to get out of a PC when playing Clone Hero. This is what professionals play at. You will have an absolute advantage playing at this frame rate. This is literally perfect. We saw an average of about 1,550 FPS. When we ran it in window mode and lowered down the resolution, we even saw an average of like 1,700. So this is absolutely insane. This is a perfect PC to play Clone Hero for. Just goes to show you can spend $125 and get the perfect Clone Hero experience. Let's get to the next game. Alright guys, so the next game that we're going to be looking at is Black Ops 2, and we are running this as always in 1366 by 768. We have everything on the max settings, but we have anti-aliasing and FXAA turned off, so we did that basically to make the frames go as high as they possibly can while also getting those textures really high. And we right now are seeing about an average of 145 FPS. Considering when you start aiming, the frames tend to drop. That's why the average is like that, and that's why I'm averaging out like that. Otherwise, when you're just running around, it can go from like 160 to 170, and sometimes we even get into somewhere above 200. So, very impressive performance. We tested this in the last video with just the integrated graphics, and we're only getting 45, but now that we have this much of an increase, I'm very, very impressed by how this is going. If you want to play this game competitively, the game almost never drops below 144, and especially if you're playing on a 60 Hz panel, you'll have absolutely no trouble playing this game online. So I'm not really killing any zombies right now. I'm just running around and trying to make the performance drop as much as possible. But yeah, it's running very good. Very impressed. Let's get to the next game. Alright guys, right here we have Doom Eternal, which is a pretty modern game, and I decided that we would test this out on here because I want to look at some more modern stuff and see what this can do. So we have this running at 1366 by 768, and we're getting an average of about 60 FPS, but it's more like 55 in some areas because the frame rate does dip, and the reason that it dips so often is because, one, we're only running with 6 gigs of RAM, and two, we only have 2 gigabytes of VRAM on the graphics card, which unfortunately is holding the thing back a bit considering that this game goes over the 2 gigabyte VRAM limit. So that's what happens with a lot of older graphics cards. They get held back by the amount of VRAM despite the amount of power that they have. That's what happens with my 970, that's what's starting to happen with my 1070, and it's definitely going to happen with the 3070 somewhere down the line. But yeah, that's basically what's going on right now. I mean, I'm happy that the game is running the way it is, and I definitely recommend having more RAM in this PC if you're going to be running this game. It's also worth noting that this game took a very, very long time to load up, and when it did load up, it was stuttering like crazy for a very long time, but it did eventually iron all its problems out, and it's running really nicely now. But that's just something to note, that there's going to be crazy slow load times if you're running on a configuration like this. But more RAM added to this PC will probably fix that problem very well, and that's honestly probably what's going to happen. So this is how Doom Eternal runs, guys. It's running very well. I'm very impressed with it. Let's look at another modern-ish kind of game. Alright guys, so right here we have the game Control, which is another pretty demanding game. This time we decided to turn the settings all the way down, and we still left it at 1366 by 768. We are getting pretty much an average of like 57 to about 62 FPS. I'd say that the average exactly would probably be like 61, and that is pretty impressive when considering how modern this game is and how, you know, kind of not modern this PC is. So very impressive performance right here. You know, just goes to show that you can get something cheap like this and you were playing modern games. So very happy with the results here. Let's get into the last game that we're going to be testing for today. Alright guys, the last game that we're going to be looking at is Dark Alliance, aka the new Dungeons & Dragons game, and this is running very well. I'm very surprised to see how well this is running. We turned down the settings to 1366 by 768 and turned the settings all the way down once again, and we got an average of about 60 FPS, but then again, we left the game capped, and I believe that's the best way you can do this. The game does stutter every once in a while, and it does drop frames every once in a while, but I'm very impressed to see that a game as modern as this is running so well on here. This game just came out on June 22nd, literally a month ago, and it is running at 60 FPS on a 750 Ti and i5 configuration. So that is very impressive, guys. I'm actually completely shocked to see how good these games are running. Yeah, that was the last game. Alright guys, now that we're done looking at games, let's look at some of the emulators that we checked out in the last video and see if there are any performance increases. Alright guys, so we're going to be taking a look at Pokemon XD Gala Darkness first on the Dolphin emulator, and this time we're doing this with 100% emulation clock speed rather than the 40% emulated clock speed, because now we have such a bigger jump in performance with this new graphics card added. So I really wanted to see what we were able to do. So we pushed this to the max, but we kept everything at the regular, you know, just the normal native settings. So we're just going to demonstrate Pokemon Battle just to show that this is running very well and basically has no hiccups at all. So basically exactly like console experience, which is very cool. So that just demonstrates the Pokemon Battle. Let's just demonstrate how it runs when it's just going normally. Alright guys, so this is one of the areas in the game that for some reason has one of the craziest of frame drops and terrible performance, but it is running absolutely flawlessly on here. We are not getting any drops whatsoever. When I played this game on my Razer Phone 2 in this area, it would drop like crazy, but luckily with a PC like this, we are getting zero issues whatsoever, and I guarantee you can turn up the resolution, but I'm not doing that in this video. We're just doing this at the standard just to show you that you can get basically perfect Gamecube emulation. So without further ado, let's get to the next game that we're going to do under emulation. Alright guys, so we're looking at a game that gave us a ton of performance issues the last time when we were looking at it with just the integrated graphics. Now we are looking at 100% zero issues when running this with the graphics card. So we're running at a solid 60 FPS. Every once in a while you'll see a stutter, which is normal with emulation on something like this, but we're basically just getting everything that we want out of this game, and it is incredible. And just like before, we are running this within 100% emulated clock speed opposed to the 40 that we did in the last video. So a major improvement. I'm very impressed with what we're getting here. It's just awesome to know that you can run GameCube games perfectly on this thing if you're doing it natively. I haven't tried doing anything with upgraded visuals yet by setting the resolution higher. I felt like this was the perfect thing to do just to try this out. This tends to be the area that for some reason has the craziest performance drops, so just goes to show that's running perfectly, and you guys will have no problem running the GameCube emulator. So now that we're done with all that stuff from what we tested yesterday with the GameCube stuff, let's look at a game that gave us the most issues yesterday, or at least I should say the last video. Alright guys, so that game that we had an issue with in the last video was Spider-Man 2 on the PS2 emulator, but for some reason we were still having an issue with it when trying to play it before as well. So this time we're going to be playing it on the Dolphin emulator rather than the PS2 emulator, and there seems to be a night and day difference. We're having no issues running the game at all. We're doing this with 100% emulated clock speed, just like we have been doing with the other GameCube games, so I think this just proves that you can run any GameCube game on Dolphin with this PC kind of configuration, and that is good news because that also means that you can probably push even further with newer emulators for newer consoles. I wouldn't doubt that you can probably push some PS3 stuff with the PS3 emulator, and you can probably do some lightweight stuff with some of the Switch emulation stuff. So with all the emulation and the games out of the way, guys, let's get into the final verdict. Alright guys, so we're here at the end of the video where I'm going to be talking about what I think, and I just have to say I'm really impressed by how this thing ran. I mean, it ran every game that we threw at it. It ran almost everything on emulation that we threw at it, minus that Spider-Man 2 thing that was having issues, but it also had issues on my high-end PC, and it's just absolutely incredible that you don't have to spend that much money to get a gaming PC that basically plays all modern games. I mean, I got the Optiplex itself for $50, I got the 750 Ti for $75, and when you consider that the graphics card market is crazy right now, when that graphics card market isn't so crazy, you'll probably be able to find even crazier graphics cards for around the same price that I got my GTX 750 Ti, which means that you'll be able to start outperforming the Xbox Series S for around this price point, which is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait for that to actually come around. So you know, if you don't know what you're doing with computers, the best thing to do is find videos like this, look all over the internet, and people will help you out. I'm happy that I got to test this thing out because I want people to see that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars, because a lot of people have a common misconception that you have to spend thousands of dollars to have a good PC experience. If you're someone without a lot of crazy standards, this is definitely something to go for. If you're someone with high standards, though, I definitely recommend doing something a little differently to where you actually build the PC altogether, where you don't just pick up something cheap, because there is a lot of risk doing something like this. The thing couldn't be working well. I happen to get very lucky, but there is a lot of risk associated with this. I'm happy I got everything up and running, but it definitely was a game of luck. So what's next for this thing? I mean, I'll add more RAM into it. That's about it, but I'm not really going to be doing too much crazy stuff on this computer, considering I already have a gaming PC upstairs and a gaming laptop. This really is like my test bench computer that I'm going to be using for when I fix my peripherals and test them. On top of that, I'll probably do this to test some software and some other stuff, so it's more of a test PC than a gaming PC, but I will be using this quite a little bit more frequently for the time being, considering how interested in it I am, and somewhere down the line, I think we're going to do even more tests on this in the future. So very happy that we got this video out. Very happy we got all the tests done, and a very special thanks to my friend Noah for selling me the 750 Ti. There's going to be a website for him in the description that I'm going to be linking, so definitely definitely go and check that website out. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope I helped you all out. I will see you all in the next one.